right now, the data shows right now, as you and I are talking, we have the most secure border in the history of this nation today because of President Trump.
And
he can't say anything. Look, he can't say anything after that.
But now all of a sudden, they want a vetting process for deportation. There's no vetting process for the hundreds of thousands, actually millions of people they release in the country, no vetting process at all. But now they expect a vetting process for those who've seen an immigration judge, been ordered removed, and all of a sudden they want even a more of a vetting process for those deported. It's ridiculous how the left has changed the story from releasing millions into the United States to now they got a court order to deport them. Now we got to do after steps, give them extra vetting, the vetting they didn't get when they came in. It's just ridiculous.
Well, again, I don't know that it's.
But we will follow.
Well,
we will follow the law. We'll use the laws on the books to enforce the laws. We're going to use existing laws, Joe.
This interview started off slow with Tom Homan, but then it got great. And part of the reason it started off so slow was Joe Scarborough was struggling for probably the first half of this interview, stumbling, mumbling. He was not ready, and it came across with how weak his questions were. Some of them were good, but Tom's answers, especially towards the end, were way better. It's Sean Daniel here. If you enjoy the video, consider liking and subscribing. Let's go watch one of my favorite men in politics.
Just wanted to ask you about that NBC report that the administration is thinking about using the Alien and Enemies Act again and may use it as early as today. Can you report? Can you either confirm that or deny that report?
We're discussing it. It's a tool in the toolbox. It's a useful tool. I mean, the President Trump can choose to invoke the authorities he has under Alien Enemies Act, the act created by Congress, against those that are enemies of the United States. So, yeah, it's a tool in the tool shed, and yeah, it's still on the table. Absolutely.
As you know, the court ruled, Brett Kavanaugh wrote for the court 9-0 that in future deportations, that he basically echoed what Scalia had said earlier, and that is anybody that's in America that's going to be deported needs to receive notice first, and then they need to have a hearing before a judge. Is that a ruling that the administration and you specifically will be following?
No, we're not talking about Americans. We're talking about illegal aliens. But President Trump has been clear. We'll follow the decision by the Supreme Court.
Good distinction right away. He's talking about illegal aliens, but Joe over here tried to frame it as Americans. Also, watch how many times Joe says in his questioning. He's not coming across very confident or well put together or ready to go today. Pay attention. He said it 1,000,000 times already in 2 questions.
Right, and again, the protections do extend, according to the Supreme Court, Scalia, others, to illegal immigrants.
That was a lot.
Abrego case. We've had many conservatives, of course, come out being very critical of it. But again, we've also had the court rule 9-0 that the administration should facilitate Abrego Garcia's return. I know you've said you're not a lawyer, you're not in the Justice Department, basically not your job. But the administration's admitted it's a mistake. All parties have admitted it's a mistake. Do you admit that it's a mistake? And is this something that should not happen again?
Look, I don't agree with the term that was a mistake. I mean, I know that was put out in the beginning, but looking at this case, there's a couple of things in play here. First of all, it's a mistake because it said he had withholding or removal. Well, the facts surrounding that withholding have changed over the years. For instance, when that decision was made on withholding, he wasn't classified as a terrorist, which he is now. And plus, the conditions of the withholding was a danger of a specific gang in El Salvador. That gang don't exist anymore in El Salvador. Matter of fact, El Salvador is one of the safest nations in the region now because of the actions of President Bukele. So the facts surrounding that decision have changed, and we believe that the withholding order is set aside now that he's a terrorist because it doesn't it doesn't pertain to those designated terrorists. He is a member of MS-13. 2 federal judges have decided that. We have a police department who documented that. ICE intelligence has documented that. The El Salvadoran government says he's an MS-13 gang member who has since been designated as a terrorist. So the entire condition around that decision have changed. The facts have changed. So we don't think the withholding is in play anymore.
By the way, withholding means, from how I understand it, that this guy could have a request made on where he wants to be deported and not be deported back to El Salvador because of the dangers that he would face there. But Tom's saying all those circumstances have changed, not only the safety in El Salvador, but the information they have on him about why he's a terrorist or not. Joe Scarborough's not doing too good so far. He doesn't seem confident. He might be off today. We also have to remember sometimes these people are people. Despite how evil they are, despite how manipulative they are people. We all have off days where we're not focused. It's going to be easy to come on here and be like, oh my God, he doesn't know what he's saying. He doesn't believe what he's saying. He's not excited about the pressures being put on him, meaning the host. But remember, we are people at the end of the day, and we don't always have great focused days. It sounds like that with Joe. At least I think. Let me know what you think down below.
Well, the courts originally thought he may be a terrorist, and federal judge said so. But of course, as I'm sure you know, the informants, the testimony was conflicting, and in fact, even the detective was suspended. That was a part of that, and the courts let him go. And the Trump administration didn't fight that order because there was no evidence ultimately to keep him in prison because he'd committed any crimes. And then again, he got this special protective order. He checked in regularly with his immigration officers, did that all the way through January of this year. So I guess what I'm curious about is, what's changed the circumstances from 2019 when the Trump administration agreed with a court, didn't appeal it, and let him be released back to his family and gave him this special protective status?
Well, again, he's been designated an MS-13 member by 2 federal judges, a police department, intelligence from ICE, and the El Salvadoran government themselves. Okay, he's a citizen and national of the country of El Salvador. He has an order of deportation issued by a judge. So let's say he was to come back. He's going to be detained and deported because he has an order of deportation. He's either going to be deported to El Salvador or another country. But what you asked, what has changed? The facts that have changed is that he is a designated MS-13 member who is now designated as a member of a terrorist organization, where the withholding no longer applies, at least in our opinion. Now, I'll let DOJ fight that out. I'm not an attorney. I'll let the Department of Justice fight it out. But that is a stance that I believe we are right now, and we'll continue to litigate it. But I think we removed the bad guy from this country, who is down at home in the custody of his country. And this country has to make the decision to release him. I mean, there's certain steps can be taken through an extradition, whatever. But right now, we think we made the right steps, and we took get bad guy and remove him from the United States, and now he's home.
Right. So for viewers that are watching, what the order said was back in 2019 that he could be deported, but he could not be deported to El Salvador. So the procedure would be, if he came back to the United States and then be deported, if he were deported to the Netherlands, or if he were deported to Honduras, any country but El Salvador, the courts would rule that to be legal. I want Mr. Homan. Let's.
But that's that's from 2019. The facts of the case have changed. The facts of the dangers of El Salvador have changed, and he knows that. And it's amazing to think of how much time Tom Homan has had to spend on this while he's trying to not only deal with all the pressures of executing non-popular decisions, but he's also dealing with the pressures that this places on his family. If he has kids that go to school, if he has his wife who's out in the normal community, he has security all the time at his home where his wife is. He's got that pressure on his head as well, which affects him. Just like I said, how Joe Scarborough can have a bad day while he's mumbling and jumbling through his questions right now. Tom Homan faces real life things as well. We think these people are just robots. that they're supposed to keep pushing through, have the right answer all the time. Yes, they deal with pressure from their job, but he also has to deal with the pressures that face his wife when she goes to the grocery store. Maybe someone gives her crap at the grocery store, then he hears about it, then he's got to take care of her mentally while trying to take care of all his staff, while trying to take care of completing Trump's agenda, and while also going on news stations all the time just to debunk this ridiculous case about this one guy who's an illegal, because the Democratic National Committee has given marching orders to everyone, MSNBC, CNN, and every Democratic person, to fight for this one case issue, which is a non-issue. He's got to deal with all that. Plus, he has a family. Plus, he has kids, along with a whole staff of people. Man, I would be so frustrated having to do this, talk about this idiotic case. Again, this is a 22-minute interview Tom Homan is a part of over something that should be nothing, but it's a stonewall to stop him, and it's a huge distraction to stop him from pushing through with the progress they've been making in the first few months.
Move on and just talk.
El Salvador is not off the table. Again, the situation about the withholding from El Salvador, the situation totally changed. The gang he feared doesn't exist anymore in El Salvador. So the dangers or the basis for the withholding no longer exist. And that's where we're saying not only do those dangers no longer exist, he's also designated a terrorist organization, doesn't apply.
Right, and
you can't have a withholding order when you're designated as a terrorist. You don't get to choose anymore.
of course, those are, as you've said, you're not a lawyer. You're going to let the Justice Department speak for it. But that is the issue I suspect we're going to see courts fighting about in the coming weeks and months about his return, if he is in fact returned, if he goes somewhere other than El Salvador. I want to ask you just generally about deportation. You worked, I'm sure this will surprise a lot of viewers, you worked for President Obama. President Obama actually gave you a presidential award. President Obama, of course, many people might remember, was criticized for being a deporter-in-chief. I got a number here. There are over 2.5 million deportations under the Obama administration. I wanted to ask you, as this administration, I think Trump administration deported 1 million during the first term. You're trying to reach some goals that I think, especially with funding cuts, are going to be really hard to reach. I'm wondering, is there the possibility of this administration encouraging self-deportation? Obviously, there are a lot of people, illegal immigrants, who are very scared, would probably like to be given the opportunity to return to their homes without ending up in maximum security prisons. Is this something, as borders are, that you and the administration is trying to work through? Because that obviously be a lot cheaper, I think, a lot better for everybody. Is that something that you all are considering?
Well, we're working the CBP One app is now the CBP Home app, and we hope people take advantage of it, especially those who are in the United States who don't have an order of deportation yet. Because if we have to go through the process of going through the courts, getting an order of deportation, and we have to find you and remove you, then you have a bar from re-entering. So we want people, if you're in the country, go home, do things the right way. Because then you don't have that bar placed against you. So if you have a U.S. citizen child, he can petition for you. If you want to come in on a work visa or visitor's visa, or come in some sort of, some sort of other status, maybe as a student, come into the country the right way, that leaves that ability open for you. But if you get formally deported, there's an automatic bar set against you, so we hope people take advantage of it. And President Trump has said before, people, depending on the situation, depending on what job series it is, he's looking at ways to bring people back to the United States the right way. What I like about that, when they come in the right way, they're not giving their life savings to the criminal cartel to come across a river or go through a desert. Less aliens will die. And Border Patrol will be 100% vigilant online rather than dealing with the humanitarian crisis that the Biden administration created, where Border Patrol is off the line taking care of this humanitarian crisis, whether it's preparing food, making hospital runs and everything. And when you take Border Patrol agents off the line during a illegal crisis like that, that's when the fentanyl comes across, killed a quarter million Americans. That's when sex trafficking women and children went up 600%. That's when a record number of people on terrorist watch lists comes across an unguarded border. So doing things your right way keeps Border Patrol on the job, vigilant 100% of the time, and let people come through the right way through the port of entry. That's what President Trump's aiming for.
So, walk me through the process, if you will. So if you're an illegal immigrant and you're in America, let's say you have a child that was born here, and you're very scared, rightfully, by a lot of things that you're seeing on television. What are the steps that you take to voluntarily self-deport and then go back to your home country and then apply to come here legally?
You go to CBP Home app, you apply through the CBP Home app. Most have access, just about all of them have, cell phones. They came across the border with cell phones. They know the CBP One app because millions came across at the border, and hundreds of thousands of them came through the CBP One app. So you just go through the CBP One app. If you can't, you go to an ICE office and turn yourself to an ICE office. That arrangement made to go home. There's a lot of ways to self-remove, and the government is willing to help you. But if you're in the country legally, you should be concerned. It's not okay to be in the country illegally. It's not okay to enter this country illegally. It is a crime. So make it right. Turn yourself in either through the CBP One Home app or go to an ICE office, an Immigration Customs Enforcement office, and make arrangements for your return. That way you can put your affairs in order and go home the right way. And, you can, certainly take advantage of the numerous ways to come back to this country legally. But it's not okay to enter this country legally. It is a crime. And so if you're in the country legally, you should not be safe and secure and comfortable being in the country legally, like you and I would not be, relaxed being in another country legally. If you're in the country legally, make it right. Give yourself some opportunities in the future to come to the greatest nation on earth.
It's so cool that they're actually giving people this option. But the option only exists and can only be actually executed by a lot of people because there is such a strong arm hammer and consequences that they could face if they don't. If we were just soft as tissue and just being nice and asking people to leave, but there was really no videos of ICE removing people, especially sometimes violently, or all these stories of people getting deported and being sad about it. If that didn't exist, people would not self-deport. But whoever came up with this idea to reverse the CBP One app to the CBP Home app, where people can sign up to self-deport so they can have an option to legally return. Whoever came up with that, smart.
And if they do that, if they go to the app or they go to ICE officials, are you guaranteeing that if they want to self-deport and do it the right way, as you say, that they will be treated humanely and be allowed to go back to their homeland in a humane manner?
I love how this is the question when they decided to violate the law. Now, part of the thing is they decided to do what the government was telling them to do because Biden and everybody was telling him, come. So, but it's funny that by them breaking the law, it's like, well, how humane are you going to treat us?
We treat all people humanely. I know there's a lot of bad stories.
A lot of people disagree.
But look, I've been doing this. I've been doing this since 1984. We do things humanely. We're the most giving nation in the world. We welcome more people to this country, refugees, than any other nation in the world. This is a very giving nation, and I've been in this business since 1984, and we do everything humanely.
I love how there's a MSNBC reporter with well-done hair who's always sitting inside a studio, has probably never even seen the border, let alone seen an arrest on the border, seen an arrest in normal life, trying to tell Tom Homan about the inhumane versus humane versions with which the U.S. handles people. It's crazy. It's like the fat guy at the donut shop telling you need to work out harder. It's like, bro, you've never even smelled a gym.
Well, I think, Mr. Homan, I've always said America's fed and freed more people across the world. than any country that's ever existed. We are a city, like Reagan said, that shines brightly on the hill for all the world to see. I think, though, people are seeing some of the situations, especially with what's happened with people being pulled off the streets and sent down to a maximum security prison in El Salvador without any due process.
But you know, Joe, what people
if you let me finish, and then I'll let you finish. That strikes a lot of Americans as being un-American, and that even people like myself that's been talking about the need for strong borders for 30 years. I think a lot of conservatives, and I can read you quotes from a lot of conservatives here, who say they want gang members out, they want violent members out, but there's a right way to do it and there's a wrong way to do it. And a lot of people believe that what we've seen over the past 3 months is the wrong way to do it. I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, look, the American people voted for this. American people voted for Donald Trump. This is number one issue. Vast majority of Americans want illegal aliens moved from this country, and it's done humanely. However, we got to remember this. There are millions of people standing in line, taking their tests, doing their background investigation, paying their fees to be part of the greatest nation on earth. They're sitting in the back seat while 10.5 million illegal aliens came to this border, enter this country illegally, which is a violation of law. There's right way and right way to come to this country legally. The people who came across, they call them asylum seekers, but you and I both know, if you look at immigration court data, 9 out of 10 of those so-called asylum seekers will end up with an order removal. They overwhelm the system on purpose. Why? Because they know it's going to take 5, 7, 9 years to have a hearing, which they will lose, but now they have U.S. citizen kids. Now they own equities. Now there may be Democratic administration in power, which will award amnesty. They're playing the long game, but we're enforcing laws as enacted by Congress, which you remember of. We're not making this up. We're enforcing laws on the books, including the Alien Enemies Act, which is an act created by Congress. We're simply using the laws on the books to make this country safe again.
Yeah. Well, and you know.
Congress made the laws, baby. Why are you getting mad at me? And this is exactly what we said we were going to do during the campaign. We ran on it. We won. Now let us execute exactly what we said we were going to do. Like, there's no games being played. If it was so bad, Americans wouldn't have voted for it. And the election wouldn't have looked as shady like it did in 2020, with Biden being the most popular president ever voted in. Yeah, okay, but his rallies looked horrible. No, this was real.
You know, it's interesting. One of the arguments you made, I would make all the time when I was in Congress. I would have people, whether they were from Pakistan or Lithuania, wherever they were from, they would come to the United States, or they'd want to come to the United States, and they would stand in line, and it would be a very long line. And I always thought it was unfair that they stood and waited in line while other people were able to just come across the border. So, again, I think we agree on that point. Again, what I'm asking you, though, is whether the administration can do this in a way that is consistent with the United States Constitution and with what 9 members of the United States Supreme Court said, which is you cannot remove somebody that is here, even illegally, if they are in America, without giving them notice and without giving them due process before a judge. Is that something that you've been instructed to do moving forward? Because 9 members of the Supreme Court say that everybody deserves that opportunity in America.
I think he's going to say they've already been given notice. That's why they have orders of deportation. That's a notice to leave.
We are using the laws on the books, the existing laws, to secure this border and to remove people here illegally with a priority on public safety threats and national security threats. We're not making this up. We're following the law, unlike the last administration who ignored the law, who actually violated the law of bringing 100,000 people, giving them parole status, the misuse of the parole statute, as you're well aware. There wasn't a case-by-case analysis of the hundreds of thousands they paroled in this country illegally. But now all of a sudden, They want a vetting process for deportation. There's no vetting process for the hundreds of thousands, actually millions of people they release in the country. No vetting process at all. But now they expect a vetting process for those who've seen an immigration judge, been ordered removed, and all of a sudden they want even more of a vetting process for those deported. It's ridiculous how the left has changed the story from releasing millions into the United States to now they got a court order to deport them. Now we got to do after accept give them extra vetting, the vetting they didn't get when they came in. It's just ridiculous.
Well, again, I don't know that it's.
But we will follow. We will follow the law. We'll use the laws on the books to enforce the laws. We're going to use existing laws, Joe.
Okay, so yeah, I was just going to say, I don't think it's ridiculous that the Supreme Court says what they say, but my follow-up question was going to be what you just said. Do you commit to following the law, following what the Supreme Court says? And we've heard the President of the United States say several times in the Oval Office that he will follow the law and what the courts say. Do you agree with that?
He just said that. He's not making the laws. And what a turnaround of logic. That was genius. I didn't even see that coming. They did not want a vetting process at all when people came to the country. But now they want a super detailed vetting process on how we decide who we send out of the country. Oh, wow, man. I didn't even notice that. Wow, let me know if you guys just realized that down below in the comments. Because wow, what a turnaround, man. That's impressive.
Yes, sir. We will.
Okay. Let me ask you, you had said, just circle back, just a fact check here. You had said that the Biden administration worked illegally to get illegal immigrants.
Right there. Joe just came back with this question because of what his producer brought back to his mind about what Tom Homan just said about the Biden administration. Watch. This is not something coming up in his brain, I surmise, I guess, because he's already struggling through a lot of the questions. Remember, he's got a team right here helping him nail anything Tom Homan says. So now he wants to revisit this one quote, which I actually heard, and I was like, oh, that's a ballsy statement to make. They might attack it. Watch, he's going to do it now.
Okay. Let me ask you, you had said...
See, he turns his head. He's like, oh, let me ask you... Because his producer was informing him before, I think.
Just circle back, just a fact check here.
See, he's struggling. He might be hearing exactly what his producer's telling him. So he's like stumbling, slowing down to hear the full thing. And then boom, I'm going to re-bring this up. He was not sharp enough in this interview to remember that on his own.
You had said that the Biden administration worked illegally to get illegal immigrants in America. Did they violate a court order doing that? When you say illegally, what do you mean by that?
I think they violated the Pro statute. The Pro statute says you can approach somebody on a case-by-case basis, based on the intricacies of each case, the specifics of each case. They didn't do that. President Biden stood at the stage and said, I'm bringing 30,000 a month in through CHNV, Cuba, Nicaragua, Haiti, Venezuela. I'm bringing 30,000 a month in. Where's the case-by-case analysis on that? It's required under the Pro statute. And they brought him in. As a matter of fact, a lot of the Venezuelans he brought in through the CHNV weren't even in Venezuela. They were living in Ecuador. So there wasn't a case-by-case analysis of these people are really escaping fear and persecution from the homeland. They're coming to the United States for a better life, and I get that. But it's not asylum. They're not escaping fear and persecution of their homeland, especially if they're not in the homeland.
Boom. Also, a quick note is that if you listen, you can always hear the papers ruffling whenever they cut away. Whenever they do a single shot of Tom Homan, the host is doing something to find some information. It's not that big a deal, but it's interesting to watch the behind-the-scenes movement of why they change camera angles. Are they listening to instruction from somebody? Because watch.
I'm bringing 30,000 a month in. Where's the case-by-case analysis on that? It's required under the Pro statute. And they brought him in. As a matter of fact, a lot of the Venezuelans he brought in through the CHNV weren't even in Venezuela. They were living in Ecuador.
And I think sometimes he makes all those noise with paper when Tom Homan is making a great point. So they cut away from Joe have him make all this paper noise to throw off Tom Homan through the mic, what he's hearing. And also maybe for when the clip is replayed on social media, you hear all this noise and it's not as impactful. You never know the games they play.
They're coming to the United States for a better life, and I get that. But it's not asylum. They're not escaping fear and persecution of their homeland, especially if they're not in the homeland.
But I'm not aware. Did they defy any court orders on that issue?
The fifth district court said not only they ignoring the law, they believe they're actually violating the law. They weren't doing a case-by-case analysis on parole. They at the end of the administration said, "Oh, we got the border numbers down." No, they didn't. They created the CHNV bucket. They created the CBP-1 app. The same illegal aliens south of the border, they put in 3 different buckets. They put a CHNV program, then they created a CBP-1 app. They call legal pathways, which they weren't. So they simply said, "Okay, we'll put thousands in the CHNV. We'll put thousands in the CBP-1 app, then we can say the border's numbers are down because we're only going to count those entering between the ports of entry." It was a shell game.
Right.
And I think what you see in the Trump administration, President Trump was able to do in 7 weeks what the Biden administration couldn't or wouldn't do in 4 years, actually have the most secure border in my lifetime. Right now, the data shows, right now, as you and I are talking, we have the most secure border in the history of this nation today because of President Trump.
And
He can't say anything. Look. He can't say anything after that.
Are talking. We have the most secure border in the history of this nation today because of President Trump.
And you're saying that can be done following the law, and you will follow whatever the Supreme Court rules on in the coming weeks and months, right?
You know, one of the biggest things, Joe, for following the law and securing the border, we ended a catch and release. You know, the statute says if you come to our border without proper documentation, you shall be detained. Not maybe, not think about it, and that's what we did. We ended catch and release. So look, and look at the success on border. And when border crossings are down 95%, let me end with this, because I've been doing this since 1984. When 95% less people are coming across that border illegally, how many women aren't being sexually assaulted? How many children aren't dying? How many pounds of fentanyl are coming across to kill Americans?
I agree with you. I agree with you, Mr. Holman, as far as how the border was in chaos, and it has been in chaos for way too long. I agree with all of that. My question to you was whether the Trump administration and whether you can and will do it. I'll just finish again with the question, whether you'll do it following judicial orders, following, as you said, the law, and following whatever Supreme Court decisions are handed down in the coming weeks and months.
We will follow the law.
He already said that 40 times.
All right. Border czar Tom Homan.
That was probably Morning Joe's one of his worst ever interviews. He was stumbling and mumbling through. Tom Homan took a bit to get going. Sometimes it's hard to understand. But he's just matter of fact. And the logic thing he brought up about how much the Democrats wanted us to vet people now that we're deporting them, but never vet them when they got to the border, that was amazing. And I'm amazed how Tom keeps doing this, because I would get so sick of doing this same crap over and over and over again. But it's necessary, because the media, everybody else, just over and over and over again is going to try to pummel Americans' minds with the negatives of what we're doing with deportations. So what does he have to do? He's got to pummel back. He's got to go on all these news stations to keep the messaging correct, to let us know what we voted for and what's going on as a result of what we voted for. And he's got a huge job. He handled this one really well, I think. It was cool to watch. Hope you guys enjoyed. It's Sean Daniel here, and I'll see you in the next one.